Well, after 7 o'clock, I'd like to call the July 1st, 2021 meeting of the Walpole School Building Committee to order. If I could first read this statement. Per Governor Baker's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, the public will not be allowed to physically access the school building committee meeting. Members of the public will be able to view this meeting on Walpole Media Cable Access the following day. Citizens with a question or comment should email mmortali@k12.ma.us. Just to review the agenda, everybody. So we have the standard approval of minutes. We have to have another discussion about the schematic design submission, a vote on the schematic design submission, and I think importantly to consider future meetings as well. So with that, I think I'll turn it over to Mr. Jarvis.
Mark, I'll share my screen. Everyone see that? Yep. All right. So as Mark just mentioned, a couple administrative items tonight, and then a follow-up meeting regarding the schematic design report, or SDR, which is the next deliverable for the MSBA. Just a quick refresher of the table of contents. Charlie Hayes here from TAP A. Chris is actually traveling on vacation tonight, but Charlie's here from TAP A if there's any additional questions from last week. We do have an update from the MSBA. They actually, following the last building committee, they held a board meeting at the end of June where they've voted to update some of their budget policies regarding caps and reimbursement and eligible costs that actually will affect this project. And right now, preliminarily, it looks like it affects it in a positive way. So we'll go through that, which changes the total project budget slightly. We'll do a quick update on where that is, and then answer any questions or comments or concerns that you might have. And then ideally, we need to get a vote by the committee to move this forward and submit to the MSBA. And right now, our deadline to get that in digitally is July 7th. So we will package up what's left and put that into the MSBA. And then finally wrap up with, we have a meeting scheduled for July 13th, which would approve the minutes from tonight, which is required for the MSBA to get those minutes approved and certified if they are the minutes that contain the vote for the schematic design report. So we'll meet on the 13th of July to do that, and we'll talk about possible meeting dates in August as we move in to the next phase. So with that, I'll give a quick update. We already talked about public participation. We haven't had any emails come through to Mary since the last meeting. And then first item of business would be the approval of the minutes from the June 22nd meeting. And those went out in your packet at the end of last week. Or I think Monday, sorry. Any questions on the minutes?
No questions on the minutes. Should have done that first, Brian. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I'd take a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
I have a motion from Ms. Lawson, and I'll take that Ms. Gallivan as a second. Let me poll the committee. Mr. Frisha.
Yes.
Mr. Barrett. Get back to him. Ms. Lawson.
Yes.
Ms. Gallivan.
Yes.
Ms. Gaositz.
Yes.
Dr. Goff.
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Conroy. Get back to him. Mr. Jeffrey Fisher.
Yes.
Mr. Jack Fisher.
Yes.
Mr. Connor.
Yes.
Mr. Senek.
Yes.
Ms. Santiago Taylor.
Yes.
Get back to Mr. Barrett.
Yes.
Thank you. And Mr. Fisher, I believe, as well.
Mr. Conroy.
Mr. Conroy, I'm sorry. Mr. Conroy? All right, we'll take that as technical difficulty.
He's on mute, so maybe just let him know he's on mute.
Jack, you're on mute. any case, I vote yes. It is a vote. So back over to you,
Thank you.
Mr. Jarvis.
So update, schematic design report submittal. This one's a little bit, let me zoom in on this, a little tough to see. Can you all see this screen? So this is the table of contents for the schematic design report. We went through this at the last meeting. The items that were highlighted in yellow were the things that went in on the early submittal on June 23rd. So that was submitted and received by the MSBA. So this is just the complete table of contents. The last items that will get packaged up for the 7th are the total project budget, basically items 4.1, 4.2, 4.3. The estimates went in with the early package, and then the project work plan, which is really TAP A's draft of a plan for the design phase, as well as some of the administrative items such as directory, communication control documents, things like that, and then the update on the project schedule, which really has not changed. There's a couple milestones that we're adding related to lead registration and things of that nature, but really the overall timeline has not changed. We're just basically confirming that the schedule is the same as previously submitted, and then local actions and approval, which based on tonight's vote will be the form that is signed by Dr. Goff, Mr. Buckley, and Mr. Johnson to submit the package to the MSBA. So that is the table of contents we've gone through. Just wanted to refresh your memory if there's any questions. If you've looked through the material and had any questions on anything in particular, we can go through that now if you'd like, and then we can get into the budget update. So again, anything in yellow was submitted on the 23rd, and then the last few items here that we talked through will be submitted after tonight's meeting or when the package is approved. Any questions on the contents of the some of these other contents other than budget or the estimates?
Hello?
Hey.
Am I coming in now? I'm having a bad time with my computer. I don't know how long longer. There's something wrong with it. And I didn't get a chance on the minutes, but I'll vote now. But before you leave me, are we voting on the budget?
Yeah, we were going to vote on the whole package, which would be inclusive of the budget, and I have an update to that tonight.
Okay, well, I do have, in case you lose me, I'm not in favor of the budget itself. Not the package you guys did, but just the budget number. But before you lose me. Hello?
Yep.
I'll be back.
All right, there's something really bad. But just the money itself, can I make that? I'll just have my vote now, so it's counted in case you lose me again.
Yeah, Mark, how do you want to phrase that, or? So Jack, are you approving the submission but not approving the budget? Or are you not approving?
I'm not, the submission I understand, but I just don't like the budget, the numbers and all that, just because of so that's where someone asked me about the budget, that's what I'm saying, not what you're submitting.
So
We are submitting the budget as part of the package. So
yeah, so we're submitting the budget as part of the package. If we took the vote and we had a comment session, are you saying you would make the comment that you disagree with the budget, but you would vote yes on the submission?
Correct, the way you've been doing. Yeah, I understand you're doing a technical submission and you're crossing all the T's and dotting the I's and all that, but and it's not that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the submission itself, what you guys have put in for the effort. I'm just saying I don't agree with how the money has been allotted or how much, that's all. Okay?
Okay. Go ahead.
I'm gonna lose. I think I'm losing people. I lost my screen. Uh-oh. Well, if you can still hear me, I appreciate it, just to make that note.
Okay.
Okay.
Mary, do you have that?
I do, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on the contents of the submission? If something comes to you, let us know. We can go back. So since last meeting, there's been an update to the MSBA's budget policies. This table kind of summarizes the high notes of that. So the MSBA does this from time to time as far as updating their policies through their board meetings. This one was fairly significant because it actually updates the way they look at certain budget items and the reimbursement aspects of them related to a couple caps. So the big ones were the categories you see on the left related to owner's contingency, which are the soft costs on a project, so not construction change orders, but the contingency that this project carries as part of the budget for things that are non-construction related. So additional design fees or administrative items or additional furniture or something of that nature that come up both through design and possibly into construction. In the old MSBA policy, they had no defined limit as far as a cap on eligibility. And what, based on their history of projects, they would basically look at each individual item that came through and evaluate it on the merits of that particular use of contingency. And obviously, if it went to an item that was already ineligible or potentially over a cap, and you're just adding additional funds to that budget item, it would be deemed ineligible. But in some cases, where it was an ineligible expense, they would basically find it eligible, reimburse you, and there was no real cap or no real limit. The new policy is basically capping 5% of use of owner's contingency, a 0.5% owner's contingency on new construction and 1% of owner contingencies on ad reno projects. So basically, they'll evaluate all of the changes that come out of owner's contingency and approve up to a 0.5%. Once that 0.5% is expended, then regardless of whether or not a future change would be deemed eligible or not, it's over that 0.5% and therefore is ineligible. They currently do the same thing with their construction contingency that we talked about. They cap it at 1%, so they evaluate change orders and agree to reimburse up to 1% of the contingency, which is 1% of the construction budget. And they do the same thing. Change orders that come in after that 1% is met are deemed ineligible, regardless of whether or not the actual item would be eligible in normal circumstances. So that's the first one. The two big ones are really related to the OPM designer fees and the MSBA construction cap. So OPM and designer fees, they had a cap at 3.5% for an OPM's fee as part of construction overall budget, and then 10% on the designer's fees. And that really was based on the cost of the building and cost of the construction cost. So if your building was 600 square feet, $600 per square foot, they would take 3.5% and 10%. Now they're saying we're still going to do the 3.5% and 10%, but we're going to cap the allowable cost per square foot at $500. So basically, they'll look at the architects and OPM's fees up to $500 per square foot, regardless of if your building cost is above that. And anything above that, they will take part of that out as ineligible cost. So we'll show you how that affects our budget at this point. We're actually in pretty good shape because the cost of the building is relatively close to the $500 per square foot. There are definitely projects in the MSBA pipeline that are north of $600 or even $700 a square foot, and that'll be a much bigger impact. Demolition and abatement, basically they're changing it from eligible scope is fully funded, meaning if the demo and abatement of the building, like in our case, is necessary for completing the project, i.e. the building is in the way, typically all of those items, except for some particular asbestos containing materials, were deemed eligible. Now they're going to look more closely at some of these and really kind of pick through what is deemed eligible, what is not. I don't think it's going to have a major impact on our project, simply because there's not much choice in what we need to do from an abatement and demolition perspective. So I don't see that being a major impact on our project. And then the big one is actually the MSBA construction cap. If you remember, when we talked through all the different types of ineligible costs and categorically ineligible and caps, one of the biggest impacts to the budget was the MSBA basically capped the cost of the building from their perspective at $333 per square foot. Again, not saying you could build the building for that, but if your building is at $500 a square foot, they would deem $167 a square foot ineligible and kind of lower that basis amount for their grant. They've actually upped that now to $360 a square foot, so basically allowing reimbursing more towards the cost of current construction. So that's a big impact to our project in a positive way, and we'll show you that in a minute. So these have gone into effect in any project that had not executed a project funding agreement, which is what happens after a town meeting or town vote. So we're a couple months away. Any project that had not entered into one of those yet is impacted by these changes. So at the end of the day, these are we believe to be positive impacts for us as far as increasing reimbursement from the MSBA. Any questions on any of these? Okay, so they actually sent out the brand new budget template with these updates already in it, so we had to like redo our budget spreadsheet that we had gone through at the last meeting to put it into the new format that have these caps applied to it. So we updated that. Can't see it. There we go. There we go. Sorry. Zoom in. So this is what we had gone through at the last meeting. Bear with me for a second. This is the same. This is the same spreadsheet updated with a couple the changes from the MSBA of how they calculate the ineligible costs, and also updated with the draft OPM and designer fees from Compass and TAP A applied to this budget and applied to the new reimbursement caps. And so nothing, the change here was the same ineligible scope from the auditorium. They do that calculation where they take the square footage of the excluded scope and then they apply that to a percentage of the designer and OPM fees and deem a portion of those fees to be ineligible as related to those spaces. So this actually remained the same. This ineligible amount was in the last budget update. This item here, cost beyond MSBA funding cap for OPM basic services. So this is, they always had this, basically if you went above the 3.5%. And then what we just talked about, they changed this at that last board meeting, which we just talked through, basing it on $500 a square foot. But the draft Compass fee for the remainder of the job is under that cap. So there's no, right now, no projected ineligible OPM fee costs, which is a good thing. Same thing for designer. So again, they look at excluded scope. So in this case, the auditorium, they apply their calculations to that and deem a portion of the designer fee to be ineligible. This has not changed since last time. And we did get a proposed fee from TAP A for the remainder of the job for design and through construction. And that also comes out as under the cap. So there's no additional ineligible monies there. So that's a change from last time. We had a couple $100,000 between those two line items. So that's gone down to zero. I'm not sure why this isn't loading, but so sorry about that. I must have caught Jack's technical difficulties. The previous slide was just the beginning of construction. Nothing had changed on that. This slide is kind of the end of the construction line items in the budget that we went through. And what you notice here is based on the change to the construction cap, so increasing it from 330 to 360, less of the cost of the project from a construction cost perspective is deemed ineligible. The last time we went through this, 32 million was deemed ineligible, and now it's down to 29. That's based on that additional $27 per square foot that they're putting towards eligible costs. This has not changed. This is the FF&E budget that we went through last time, carrying $1,800 per student for FF&E and $1,500 for technology. Again, both of those are over the caps of $1,200, which spits out some ineligible money, but it's not atypical for these projects, especially for new buildings where you're fitting them out completely. But what you do notice here is that this bottom line number, the 71, was kind of the starting point, the basis for their estimated facilities grant. The last time we looked at this, their basis was down to 66.9. So they were looking at 66.9 and then taking 52% of that for their grant. Based on that increased funding with that $360 per square foot, it's now 71.6. So that's gone up. So the 52% of 71 versus 66, which translates into a projected larger reimbursement for the town. And the bottom line number, as you see at the bottom, $116 million project with the additional reimbursement based on these changes from the MSBA, that lowers the projected town share by about $1.7 million. So just under 78 million is what we're saying, and it was at 80. So, which is a good thing. So, from a project perspective, the changes from the MSBA were positive and should result in a higher reimbursement amount from the MSBA. Any questions on any of those items? And that's really it. The last slide that isn't showing up here was just talking about the next meeting and possibly dates in August. I have a couple slides from the last meeting if we have to reference them, but I'll stop sharing since I'm having an issue with that. So that's the update.
Does anybody have any questions at all about anybody have any questions about the whole schematic design package or any of the components of it?
Could I ask just Brian one quick question on the updated financials?
Yeah, sure.
That you said the net result is about a $1.7 million decrease in the town's share, and most of that is from the increase in the square footage allowance that they allow for eligible costs.
That's correct.
Okay. How often do they update these guidelines?
Not very often. That 333 had been sitting out there for several years now, 4 or 5, maybe longer.
Okay, thank you, Brian.
And it was actually a pretty significant jump. I want to say that they started in the low 3s when they started doing this. I don't remember it being in the 2s, so it was like 305 and then went to 333. So it was a pretty big jump there.
Yeah, this is a pretty significant increase for MSBA standards.
Nancy, you had a hand?
Yeah, just one question about the contingencies.
Yep.
How does the contingency money get spent? Like, does that have to get approved by this committee?
Yeah, so if you're talking about the contingencies that are in the total project budget, they'll actually, if it's CM at risk, there'll actually be 3 contingencies, Nancy. The CM, the construction manager, will have a contingency within their contract. Use of that contingency would have to be approved. Typically what we do is we get those requests and treat them just like a change order, get those approved to use that contingency. And then outside of their contract in the total project budget, the owner has a construction contingency and the owner has an owner's contingency for those soft costs. So anything that hits against those contingencies, just like we did on the municipal building projects, we basically bring those to the committee monthly at a minimum for review and approval. And then if approved, execute a change order or an amendment to the architect or whatever it might be. And then it transfers money from the contingency budget line item into whatever budget line item it needs to go to.
Okay, I thought that was the case. I just wanted to be sure. Thank you.
Mr. Senek, you had a hand.
Brian, question on the total budget that the town has to essentially eat. The initial budget from last week, as far as I can see from the documents that we're looking at, was 79. What was it? 79.2 mil.
Yep.
And now it's 77.7, so it's more than $2 million in savings.
Yeah, there was. I mean, I think that there was a couple other changes in there, Boris. I think I was going off of I think it was the change that I was referencing to was comparing that to what the projection was when we did the PSR, the first time we did the projection. So at the beginning of schematic design, we updated this budget, and I think it's a change from where we originally, started at the beginning of schematic design. So I think you're right. Like technically, at the end of last week, it's closer to $2 million.
Okay, and then the reimbursement percentage, that should also go up. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it went up a couple percentage points, like 30. It's close to 33.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I see that's still at 2.22%, same as it was last time.
No, so what ends up happening, Boris, is that the 52.22 will not go up, but like we talked about, that's the percentage that they apply against those eligible costs, right? So the eligible amount now has increased, so 52% of that.
Higher.
You got it. So it ends up being the effective reimbursement rate, I think, has gone from about 31 to about 33.
Okay.
And again, this is all our projections and estimates based on what we have. This will get finalized with the MSBA in the coming months, but this is kind of setting the expectations and people's understanding that it's not, 52% of the total project budget. It's going to be something less than that, but this was I think a positive change.
Do you have a rough estimate what that looks like from a taxpayer standpoint?
What the change would be?
All the saving, yeah.
It's fairly minimal. I mean, it's just a couple dollars. So if you're talking $450, it's probably in the $447 range, $445 range, if that.
Okay. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions? No questions at all. So with that, I think we'll move on to the most important business at hand. I would entertain a motion to approve the schematic design submission to the Massachusetts School Building Authority.
So moved.
I have a motion from Ms. Lawson. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second from Ms. Gaositz. Let me poll the committee. Mr. Frisha.
Yes.
Mr. Barrett.
Yes.
Ms. Lawson.
Yes.
Ms. Gallivan.
Yes.
Ms. Gaositz.
Yes.
Dr. Goff.
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yeah.
Mr. Anderson. We'll get back
Yes.
to Mr.
He
All
said
right, very
yes.
good.
Yep.
That is a yes. Mr. Conroy. We'll get back to Mr. Conroy. Mr. Jeffrey Fisher.
Yes.
Mr. Jack Fisher.
Yes.
Mr. Connor.
Yes.
Mr. Senek.
Yes.
Ms. Santiago Taylor.
Yes.
Ms. Santiago Taylor. Your microphone is off.
Yeah.
Oh, I said yes. Yes.
Okay,
Can
very
you hear
good.
me?
And,
Yeah.
Yep.
thank you. And Mr. Conroy, your mic is off, Mr. Conroy. So Mr. Conroy apparently can't hear me, and I vote yes. I'll call it a vote. Thank you. So our next order of business is consideration of upcoming meetings. To Mr. Jarvis, I know there have been some conversation about when we're going to get information back from the MSBA. So
Yeah, the next steps is we'll submit this on the 7th. That'll go through the MSBA review process. There will be a scope and budget agreement conference. We'll meet with TEPA, the district, et cetera, kind of run through all this stuff. It's not clear exactly when you get that back. It kind of goes on their timeline. They are extremely busy with this August board meeting. So next step is we have a meeting on July 13th for this committee. Again, administrative item would be just to approve the minutes, and then the budget and invoice package for June. So those are the only two items that will be on the agenda. That'll be July 13th at 7. And then our thoughts is that we would hold both Tuesday, August 10th and Tuesday, August 17th at 7, depending on when we get information back from the MSBA to review, which will basically be a scope and budget agreement where they define the contract with the town, as we talked about. They'll have a draft of that total project budget that we just reviewed, which will be their review of it, which what they officially deem to be eligible or ineligible, confirming the reimbursement percentage as well. And then basically we'll have that budget for approval formally by this committee, therefore the district and the town, and eventually agreed upon and approved at the MSBA board meeting on the 25th. So we're not sure when we'll have that information back. We would anticipate that it would be as early as maybe a meeting on the 10th, as late as a meeting on the 17th, given that the board meeting is August 25th. So it's up to the committee if we just want to hold both dates, and then obviously if we have a quorum, we'll make it work. And then Mark, depending on how you want to do it, is, whether that's going to be in person or hybrid, we can work out those details. But we can send out invites for both the 10th and the 17th, unless someone has objections for that, or if we need to pull other dates. If you know now that you might not have a quorum on one of the dates, let us know. We'll try to figure out another date.
Brian, I lost you there for a good 30 seconds. So we're aiming for this meeting or meetings to be in person. We're going to try to figure out what the hybrid option might look like in the meantime.
Yeah, and we can work through with you and the school department, and then whatever location, if we want to do it in person. The suggestion would be maybe to do the 13th, remain virtual, since it's literally just approving the minutes and very administrative, and then have people in person starting on the 10th or the 17th.
Correct.
That's all we have.
Anybody have any questions or comments about proposed dates?
I do have a question. So is the proposal that it's August 10th and August 17th in person both?
I think the proposal is just to hold the dates,
Okay.
Sue, and that way, if we need both, we have both. If we just need one of them, we'll cancel the other one. So it all depends when we get information back from the MSBA.
Okay, and is it going to be in person only or hybrid?
I think that's up to however the committee can do it. I know like Selectmen went hybrid the other night. I'm not sure. It depends. I think it probably depends on what room and how the technology is set up.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? So we do not have an official date. We're just asking everybody to keep those 2 dates open. Pending, I think, information.
We'll send out meeting invites to hold on your calendar.
Okay, very good.
Brian, just to confirm, there is a July 13th meeting
That's correct.
Approving the minutes from this meeting. So just, that's the next meeting that everybody needs to be mindful of.
Correct. And I think you already have an invitation for that, or a placeholder.
So July 13th would be a brief virtual meeting, everybody. Pardon me, my connection's breaking up quite a bit here. So as far as I can see, our last item here would be a motion to adjourn unless I've missed anything. Have I missed anything?
That's all we had.
Good. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Ms. Gaositz. Do I have a second?
Second.
Do I have a second?
Boris seconded it.
Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Senek. My connection's breaking up. We have a second from Mr. Senek. Let me poll the committee. Mr. Frisha.
Yes.
Mr. Barrett. We'll get back to Mr. Barrett. Ms. Lawson.
Yes.
Ms. Gallivan.
Yes.
Ms. Gaositz.
Yes.
Dr. Goff. Dr. Goff.
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Conroy. Get back to Mr. Conroy. Mr. Jeffrey Fisher.
Yes.
Mr. Jack Fisher.
Yes.
Mr. Connor.
Yes.
Mr. Senek.
Yes.
Ms. Santiago Taylor.
Yes.
And again, back to Mr. Barrett.
I don't see him on right now.
I guess, yeah, we see him.
I don't
Lost
see him
him.
Mark.
And
I think he dropped
back
off.
to Mr. Conroy. Mr. Conroy, your microphone is off. I'm not sure if you can hear us. I'm going to call it a vote, and I vote yes. With that, the motion, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.